the Scrum framework high level overview. So this slide is basically going to cover the high level overview of Scrum. Basically, Scrum is founded on empiricism and lean thinking. So these are the two core concepts which are foundation of Scrum: empiricism and lean thinking. Empiricism is about basically uh, uh, adapting the things based on knowledge. So you learn something, and you use that knowledge to adapt your ways of working or product accordingly. And lean thinking is all about reducing the waste. So you reduce the waste in terms of additional steps you are doing in your process, or additional features you are building in your products. So these are the two key principles which are founding, sorry, two key ideas on which Scrum is built, which is empiricism and lean thinking. We are going to discuss these in more details in coming slides. And then Scrum is basically upheld by three pillars. What are they? Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. These are the three key pillars on which Scrum is built. These three pillars I'm going to discuss in details in upcoming slide. Then Scrum is lightweight. So I've discussed this lightweight. Lightweight means the if you look at the Scrum guide, the content of Scrum guide is just 5-6 pages. It's not a lot of content. So you don't need to learn a lot of content to learn Scrum. Basically, the content is less. The framework is light. Basically, easy to understand. So for learning the basics of Scrum, or for understanding the basics of Scrum, it will not take you much time. So it is easy to understand what is Scrum, but it is difficult to master. If you want to become an expert of if you want to become a master of Scrum, that part is difficult, because reading books, learning, attending lectures, all that is easy, but actually practicing Scrum, that is the hard part. Act- Actually aligning your mind towards Agile and Scrum principle, that will take time. That will You will need to understand all these principles at a more deeper level. That's why they are saying it is difficult to master. It will not take you much time to learn the Scrum, basic of Scrum and all that, but to become a master in Scrum, it takes time. Basically, it's difficult to do that. Then it consists of basically these four things. The entire Scrum is about these four things. One is accountabilities. So it have a set of accountabilities. For example, product owner, Scrum Master, and developers. Those these three accountabilities. It have a set of 5 events. It have 3 artifacts, and it have rules which binds these individual elements. When they are saying elements, they are talking about these elements. So they have rules which bind all these elements together. That makes sense. So basically, what is Scrum? Scrum is founded on these two ideas, empiricism and lean thinking. It have these three pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Then it is lightweight, easy to understand, but difficult to master. And it consists of these four things. If you talk to most people who tell you they are expert in Scrum, they will tell you about these four things, which is accountability, events, artifacts, and rules. And if we want to know the basics of Scrum, we should, at a minimum, we should know all these things. Obviously, we are going to discuss these things in more details now. So, what are the 3 accountabilities of Scrum? So, if you look at the previous Scrum guide, this word, which is now called as accountability, in old Scrum guide it used to be called as roles, but in 2020 guide onwards, Scrum guide onward, they are calling it as accountability. So if you're going to write an exam, please remember to to understand, basically to remember that it's called accountability now, no more roles. So in Scrum, basically there are 3 accountabilities. What are they? Product owner, this is number one accountability. Then you have Scrum Master and developer. So these are the only 3 accountabilities in a Scrum team. So you have a Scrum team which have these 3 accountability, right? And what is the role of product owner? So product owner is basically a value maximizer. His main role is to maximize the value of product increment or the product which is being shipped. Obviously there are more details to it, we'll discuss it in upcoming sessions. Then the scrum master. What is the main role of scrum master or accountability of scrum master? His main accountability or responsibility is to coach the scrum team about the some framework, whether it is basically help them in understanding the various accountabilities, events, artifacts, and rules, and coach them on the scrum process, and help in removing the blockers which are coming in progress of team. That's the key role of scrum master. Just one key thing to remember here is scrum master is not a manager. Okay, he doesn't manage any person. Okay, so just remember that. And he is not a project manager. In Scrum, there is no one called as project manager. Then you have developers. Developers are the people who actually, do the coding, testing, or if the work needs some kind of design, they do the design. So all the more detailed work is done by the developers. So these are the three accountabilities in Scrum. Then there are five uh, official events in Scrum. What are these five events? And they are time boxed. What is the meaning of time boxes? The maximum limit is already informed by Scrum to us. So the sprint itself, a sprint can be maximum of 1 month. So that the time box of a sprint is maximum 1 month, which is basically 4 weeks. So if you are following Scrum, your sprint length should not go more than uh, a month. It can be less than a month. For example, you can have a 2 week sprint, 1 week, or 3 week sprint. Then, if you are then the other event is sprint planning event. So, sprint planning event is the event where the entire scrum team come together and plan the work for this particular sprint. They basically here they decide what they are going to develop and deliver in the upcoming sprint together, and they do the estimation and all that. And it should be maximum of 8 hour. The time box for this sprint planning event is 8 hour for 1 month sprint. If the length of sprint is going to be shorter, then this 8 hours can be the sprint planning meeting can be shorter. Then daily scrum, this is another event. It happens every day. So sprint planning happens only once in a sprint. So remember that within a sprint, sprint planning event will happen only once at the beginning of sprint. Then daily scrum happen every day in the sprint, and it has to happen at the same place, same location, and it is always 15 minutes. What it means is, irrespective of sprint length, whether the sprint length is 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, the daily scrum is always going to be 15-minute event only. I mean, 15-minute maximum. Like you, if the team have already discussed, completed the agenda for scrum team in 5 minutes, they can leave in 5 minutes. But the maximum time is 15 minutes. Then sprint review. Sprint review meeting is the event is the event where basically the Scrum team reviews the product increment they have built against the definition of done, and Scrum team along with the other stakeholders, they check whether the use stories or PBIs they have built, the increment they have built, it meets the definition of done or not, and what are the shortcomings, and they gather that feedback from various stakeholders and implement that in the next sprint. And it is supposed to be a maximum of 4 hours for a 1 month sprint. Next event is sprint retrospective. It is 3 hours. So a lot of people confuse between sprint review and sprint retrospective. I'm going to talk about what are the key difference between them a little bit while later. In sprint retrospective is what you do is you look at your ways of working or the process you followed during this iteration or this sprint. What it uh, what it means is, let's say you are let's say product owner and developers are having a daily meeting about something, or the Scrum team is using, let's say, Google Meet software or Jira software for uh, for their daily work, or the way the requirements are captured as user stories, but they don't capture acceptance criteria. So they basically look at their ways of working, like the way the way they collaborated or worked in this particular sprint. They'll retrospect at that, they look back at that and figure out what needs improvement in their ways of working, and they agree that these are the things that we need to improve, and they basically capture those improvement as adaptation for next sprint, and in next sprint they are going to work on basically adapting or solving these problems. And what is the key difference between sprint review and sprint retrospective? In sprint review, we review, the focus is the product increment which we have built. Basically, the product, let's say you're building a car, or then your focus is that car, like whatever increment of car you have built in this sprint. So uh, you inspect that. But in sprint retrospective, the focus is the ways of working, basically, let's say, or your process you are following. So these are the two key difference between these two events. And obviously the time of each of these events, other than daily scrum, can be reduced based on the sprint length. If you are having a 2 week sprint, you might have the sprint planning for 4 hours, and this for let's say 2.5 hour, and this for, let's say, 2 hours, something like that. Obviously, Scrum Guide doesn't specify now that if you are having less than 4 week sprint, what should be the time box for each of this. So they used to, if you look at the old Scrum Guide, it had a prescription of how much time each of these events should be when the sprint length is less than 4 weeks. But now they have removed that guidance, because they want you to decide based on your context what should be the right size of each of these events for your team. If you are doing a shorter sprint, obviously it should be less than 4 week sprint, but what is that the right time box that you have to figure out on your own. But daily scrum will always remain 15 minutes. Any question on this slide before we move to next one?
Yeah, one question. I'm Chinmay here.
Yes,
So I
Chinmay, go
just
on.
wanted to know whether sprint and iteration, are they one and the same thing or there are different things?
So from agile perspective, they are same. But when we are using Scrum framework, if you are implementing some framework, we have to follow Scrum terminology. In Scrum's terminology, it is called as sprint. That makes sense.
Okay, okay, thanks.
So if you go to organizations who are using Scrum and they are following Scrum to the letter, like they are following exactly what is written in the Scrum guide, they will not like you to use the word iteration. They will want you to use the word sprint. In English, both are same things. Iteration and sprint are same. But in Scrum, this iteration is called as sprint.
Okay, thank you.
But in other frameworks, it can be called as iteration. Okay. So if I am doing a class on other frameworks, I can, highlight that what it is called in that other framework. But in Scrum, it is called as sprint. Okay.
Oh,
Any other question on this slide? Okay, let's move on to the next section. Three artifacts. So these are the three artifacts of Scrum. What are they? Product backlog, sprint backlog, increment. So officially, there are only three artifacts of Scrum. Artifacts means, like, you can imagine them as deliverables, documents in loose terms, obviously. In Scrum terms, you should be only using the word artifact. But people who are not coming from that background, who have not done these things before, imagine them as a, like, a kind of a document or set of documents. So product backlog is one deliverable or document. Sprint backlog is one document or set of deliverable documents, and increment is basically the product itself, like the product increment which you are delivering. So these three artifacts are the key artifacts of Scrum, and each of these artifacts have their own commitment. Commitment is what? It's a promise, right? Promise from whom? Basically, promise from Scrum team to like basically promise within the Scrum team to each other. So for product backlog, the product goal is the commitment. Uh, for what it means is the Scrum team who is working on this product is committing or promising to deliver this product goal, right? That's the meaning of commitment. Sprint goal. Sprint backlog. For sprint backlog, the commitment is sprint goal. So what this means is the Scrum team which is working on this particular sprint backlog, they are committing or they're promising to deliver this sprint goal within this sprint, within this particular iteration. Then increment. Increment is basically, I've already told you, increment is nothing but the increment of product which we are going to deliver in this sprint, right? And what is the promise or commitment for that? Definition of done. So definition of done are basically a set of quality parameters. So all the PBIs or features we are going to deliver uh, in this particular sprint, the Scrum team promises that all the entire increment will meet the definition of done, or they commit to deliver the definition of done for the entire increment. So some of these ideas will become more clearer to you when we go inside it. For the purpose of this slide, just remember that we have three official artifacts in Scrum: product backlog, Scrum sprint backlog, and increment, and each of them have their own commitment: product goal, sprint goal, definition of done. And what it does, like why we are having these commitments. Each artifacts you includes a commitment. Why we have this commitment? To ensure that information is provided uh, that improves transparency and focus to make progress measurable. So what it is doing by having these commitments, we are improving transparency. Transparency for whom? For the entire Scrum team as well as our stakeholders. Stakeholders are can be sponsors who are giving us money, or the people who are giving us requirements, right? So so it brings having these commitments visible, artifacts and uh, commitments visible commonly within the Scrum team and stakeholder. What it does is create a transparency. Now everyone knows what is our product goal, what we are trying to build in next 3 months, what is our sprint goal, what we are trying to build in next 3 months. So now everyone knows, no, because it's transparent or available to everyone on the Scrum team and stakeholders, and they know the quality parameters which each increment have to meet, because everyone in within the Scrum team and the stakeholders can see the definition of done. So it brings that transparency. Other thing what it does, it brings that focus within the entire Scrum team and stakeholders. What is the focus? Now they know that this is the product goal we were trying to achieve. Let's say you're building Tesla autonomous car, and for the product goal for next 3 months for you is to build the someone automatic summon feature. What is that feature? Is you press a button, let's say you're starting standing in front of your house and you own a Tesla car, your car is in the garage. You go to your mobile app, you press a button of someone, and what it does, it brings automatically the Tesla car will drive from your garage and will come in front of you, right? So that is a summon feature. So let's say that is your goal in product goal in for next 3 months. What it means is entire team now know that, and the stakeholders know that their focus should be to deliver this product goal in next 3 months. So their entire energy should be focused on that. That is the focus idea. Then sprint goal, what it does, the sprint team, which is the Scrum team, let's say the sprint goal is to, let's say, start the car automatically, because in long term you have product goal, which is bring the car from garage to in front of you. But the car first step is to start the car automatically, right, when you are away from it. So that car starting automatically becomes your first sprint goal, right? And now everyone knows that in the first sprint we have to make sure that on press of a button from the mobile app the car is started automatically. Then definition of done. So for this increment, definition of done is quality parameters which are applied to the entire product increment you are building. So what you are trying to achieve here is you're making sure whatever you are building is meeting these quality parameters. Okay, so this is what I wanted to discuss in this slide. More details will come in upcoming slide. Any question on this slide before we move to next one? Okay. If there is no question, I'll quickly summarize. Basically, this slide is the minimum. Like if you are telling anyone that you know Scrum, that means you should know this minimum of this, right? Which is Scrum have three accountabilities. What are these accountabilities? Product owner, Scrum Master, developer. These are the three minimum three sorry these are three official accountabilities from Scrum. Then the Scrum have five official events, which is sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective. Then it have three artifacts: a product backlog, a sprint backlog, increment, and each artifact is having own commitment. For product backlog is product goal, for sprint backlog is sprint goal, for increment is a definition of none. These are the minimum things which all, I mean, anyone who is saying they know Scrum, they should know this. And this is, it can be summarized by this 3-5-3 rule. What is three here is three accountabilities. Five is five events. Three is three artifacts. Rule is basically the rules are the rules which join all these things together. Those rules will be coming. We'll discussing in next session. Then there are five Scrum values. These values are commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. These values we are going to discuss in upcoming slide in more details. So this is the minimum which all of us should know if we are telling anyone that uh, we know Scrum, right? And it should be minimum. All of us should know this by heart. Okay, let's move on to next one. So Scrum framework, high level overview. So in this one, I'm going to give a more high level overview of what is this Scrum framework about. So what? So I've already told you that we have this product owner accountability, which is also, it used to be called as a role in Scrum. So what product owner does is he gathers the wants and needs of customers and record them in as requirements in product backlog, right? And uh, customers can be internal or external. What does that mean? Let's say you are in a big organization. Let's say you work in Apple, right? And you are building a CRM, customer relationship management product for Apple, and you are the product owner of this CRM product. So for you, the customers will be internal customer, which are basically the employee of Apple, right? Because this CRM is a internal facing product, right? So this is a scenario where internal customers are the customer. Then let's take an example of external customer. Let's say you're building a autonomous car like Tesla, right? You are product owner of Tesla autonomous car, and your car will be the car you are building, it will be used by end customer who are going to drive this car. In this particular scenario, the customers whom you are going to talk to gather their needs and want are external customers. So these two examples I have discussed, and whatever needs and wants you have discussed with these internal and external customers, you have gathered these requirements from them, you will put them in this uh, product backlog. Why they are showing it like this is a big block, then these are little bit smaller block than this, and then these are more thinner blocks, and these are very very thin lines. Why it is like that? Because the this is the way product backlog is organized. When you are building your product backlog are nothing but the features or capabilities which you are going to build in your product over a period of time. That's what is product backlog. Obviously, you might not build everything which is captured in product backlog. You might, because a lot of these things you don't know how much value they are going to add to customer. So the initial requirements which are high level, you don't understand them fully, or you haven't figured out the details fully. They are captured at bottom of the backlog. The uh, the uh, the uh, the requirements which are more refined, about which you are more certain, which have higher priority, you put them here, which is in second order. And the highest order requirements which have very high priority, which are clearly defined, well refined, they are put at the top. So that's and uh, they are sized in a way that they can be delivered, like each of that requirement can be delivered within a sprint, and that's why they are looking smaller. Why they are smaller is because we can deliver each of this requirement within a sprint. That's why they are smaller. So they are sized in a way that they can be delivered in a sprint. And why they are looking bigger? Because we don't know full details about them. They are big huge capabilities. We haven't refined them fully. We haven't broken them in more smaller chunks, which can be delivered within a sprint. And the items which are on top, they will be, that means those are the items which will be delivered earlier. And the items which are in towards the down, they are less priority item, less refined item. So that's the way product backlog is arranged. More details we'll discuss later on. So the product owner basically capture the needs and wants of customer in form of product backlog. And then what we do is some of these stories or PBIs which are well refined, uh, which were sitting here, they are moved to they are taken to sprint planning meeting. And in sprint planning meeting, basically stakeholder, minimum three kind of stakeholder come: product owner, scrum master, and developer. These three stakeholders come, and as we have discussed in last slide, it is a 8 hour, uh, maximum 8 hour meeting for 1 month sprint. And all these three set of people, they come in the sprint planning meeting, and they discuss uh, some of these. I mean, they discuss these PBIs. They the developers provide the estimate against each of these PBI. They will tell that how much pointer PBIs each of this. So basically, they kind of tell the effort which will be required to build each of these item, and together they craft a sprint goal. So basically, they come up with a goal which they decide as a team that that's what we are going to. I mean, this is the goal we are going to deliver in this sprint. Then some of these, like let's say you have taken 3 plus 3, 6 PBI to the sprint planning meeting, right? And from that 6 PBI, you came to know that in this coming sprint we only have capacity to deliver 3 PBI. So only three of these, the team decides to take them into sprint backlog, right? So we took 6 PBI in sprint planning meeting. You will not necessarily take all of them in sprint backlog. So based on your capacity, like how many people you are and how much time they are available and how big each of these PBI is, you decide to take some of the, based on your capacity, you decide to take some of these in your sprint backlog. And sprint backlog is guided by the sprint goal. Then there are PBIs which were decided that for the PBIs which we decided that we are not taking them, we are not going to build them in this sprint. They're put back. They are basically put back in the sprint backlog. Uh, no, sorry, in the product backlog. And then what happens is basically the the s- the team, developers, they every day they held this daily scrum meeting where they discuss the daily plan, what is their plan for today to progress on these each of these PPIs. That's what they discuss in the daily scrum. They discuss the bottlenecks or blockers which are coming in their path to deliver these PBIs. They can discuss other things as well, but these are the two key things they discuss in this daily scrum event. Obviously, the scrum master job is to coach the team to coach the team to make sure that this daily scrum and other events happen. Also, he have to make sure, he or she have to make sure that it is kept in the time box, and the time box for daily scrum is 15 minutes. Then let's move to the next step. Then basically the sprint, let's say that sprint is of 4 weeks, which is almost a month. The team work for the entire sprint, and they develop this increment they have developed, product increment, which is then taken to sprint review meeting. And what happens in the sprint review meeting is basically the product owner and reviews the increment against the definition of done. So basically, the product owner reviews each of the PBI whether and inspect it and check basically whether the definition of done is met by each of the PBI or not. And the items which are not done completely, they are put back in the sprint backlog. And then this increment whatever we have built here is released to the customer. Then after this, what we do is sprint review meeting. What happens in this sprint retrospective meeting? What happens in this sprint retrospective meeting, as I've discussed before, we the the Scrum team, which consists of developer, Scrum Master, product owner, they come together in this sprint retrospective event, and they look back at the ways of working they followed in this cycle. So in this entire cycle, they look at the ways they worked together, whether it is collaboration they did, whether they did some kind of documentation, or how they released the increment, how they were communicating with each other. So basically, they look at their ways of working, and they figure out what did not went well, and they figure out some improvement item from their ways of working. And they decide that these are the changes we are going to do in these ways of working, and they put that as a backlog item in their sprint backlog for next week, next sprint, and they basically work on that item to fix their ways of working. And just remember, don't get confused between sprint review and sprint retrospective. Sprint review event is about reviewing your product, the product increment which you have built. This is about reviewing and adapting that event. Adaptation happens in next sprint. Whatever review we are doing, this is a basically a feedback. You are inspecting and figuring out what need to change. The actual change or adaptation happens in next sprint. Say and here this retrospective, again, in this retrospective you are not looking at your product. In this retrospective you are looking at your ways of working, how you worked together or individually in during the sprint, and the process you followed. You looked at those things and figure out the changes which need to implement there, because some things were not working properly. So you figure out what are those adaptation, and you implement those changes in next iteration. uh, and what here they are showing is, like, you figured out improvement item, and then you put that uh, improvement item for the next sprint planning meeting. So immediately after the sprint retrospective, next sprint starts, and basically the next day you do a sprint planning meeting for the next sprint, right? And the same cycle repeats, keep repeating sprint after sprint.